Welcome to NewsNation's Backscroll, where we look back at our major news coverage on the most important topics and personalities of our time.
For somebody who's been trying to get out of jail as quick as possible, Diddy seems to be all smiles in his first photos behind bars. Over the weekend, eagle-eyed cameras captured him at his new home, Fort Dix, a low-security federal prison in Jersey. You could see Diddy hanging out in the prison yard with his fellow inmates. That's him right there in the gray beanie there on the left. And judging from the photos, it looks like Diddy's pretty popular, laughing and chatting with a whole group of fellow inmates. The only possible sign of stress here is that all that gray hair we can now see in his beard. Though truth be told, he had a lot of it during his trial. But until now, we only saw sketches. There were no cameras allowed in the federal courtroom. If Diddy enjoyed his outdoor time, it's unclear if he felt the same way about his indoor time, because his new day job is in the prison laundry. Diddy checked into Fort Dix last week to serve the remainder of his 50-month sentence for prostitution-related charges. He's expected to be released May 2028, but you know those dates can change, all depending on what goes on in the big house. Hey, thanks everybody for watching. Check out Drop Dead Serious, my podcast. Got a lot of good new stuff on there. Watch this space. Something happened to Sean Diddy Combs yesterday that you probably would have read about were he not in prison. He had a birthday, his 56th birthday. And since inmates have a lot of time alone with their thoughts in prison, I assume he thought at least once about his 50th birthday back in 2019 and the high-end, over-the-top party to end all parties that went along with it. This thing was sponsored by Ciroc Vodka, which created a cocktail called the Governess just for that event. I'm sure there's a story behind that name, but I don't know it. If you do, text me. Also, Diddy commissioned a sculpture for the center of his rose garden that beamed light patterns throughout the entire lavish grounds. Take a look at that thing. Just amazing. The entertainment for this 50th birthday included a concert by Mary J. Blige. And the guest list included Jay-Z and Beyonce, Post Malone, Usher, and Leonardo DiCaprio. If you were lucky enough to be on the guest list, you got a goodie bag full of cannabis products. And then at 2 a.m., this is the pièce de résistance, the partygoers were treated to a big snack, McDonald's on golden platters. But hear me out, hear me out. This was a special McDonald's menu. It was created by the McDonald's company just for Diddy's big night. So nothing that you've ever seen in the drive-thru, nor will you ever. And again, gold platters. But McDonald's or not, that late-night snack was 1,000 times better than what Diddy was served for his birthday this year. And I know that because we have the menus from the Federal Correctional Institution at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Diddy's new home away from home for the next 2 years. So here we go. Yesterday, wake up, happy birthday. Breakfast is fruit, a choice between bran flakes and breakfast cake, whatever that is, or whole wheat bread and 2 jelly packets. You got that with skim milk, margarine, and sugar substitute. That was at 6:30 a.m., by the way. Lunch was at 11 a.m., and Diddy got chicken parm, not bad, or a chickpea burger. It was his choice. He got pasta with marinara sauce, spinach, garlic bread, or whole wheat bread, and a beverage. Dinner was at 4:30 p.m., and Diddy got a choice between cheese pizza or navy beans, Italian pasta salad, green beans, garden salad with a choice of dressing, and again, that fancy beverage. Diddy was allowed to have a birthday cake, believe it or not, but he would have had to buy it himself. Here's what the prison commissary offers. Cheesecake squares for $1.07, honey buns for $1.30, Pop-Tarts for $2.85, and a selection of cookies from $1.95 to $2.60. The next 2 birthdays don't look much brighter than this one because Diddy is due to get out in May of 2028. So I'm thinking his big 5'9" should be historic, depending on how much money he has left when he finally gets out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out my podcast, Drop Dead Serious.
Have you talked to Sean since this reported knife incident in the prison?
Well, I know that previously, and it was in the sentencing paperwork, that that has happened, and he's in a It's in a prison facility. These are the things that happens in a prison facility. I might push back just a wee bit on the setup for this, and that for those who think that this was purposefully leaked in order to curry favor or anything else, that's not within Sean's wheelhouse, so to speak. So I think if there is any kind of a pardon or commutation in the works, I think it's probably more a product of the president understanding that Sean, like the president, they both share, or it resonates that New York prosecutors came after him and weaponized the legal system, and Sean has now been through it, just as President Trump has been through it. So there is I don't want to call it a kumbaya, but there's certainly a resonance or a similarity between the two.
President Trump, as we've just played, said that Sean Combs had reached out to him. Do you know how that happened? Did he write a letter? Did somebody place a call for him? How did that happen?
I know that it did. I'm not going to betray exactly how, but I know that there has been that communication, and I know that obviously Sean would welcome a commutation or a pardon. That's no secret. I saw today with great interest that there was another person who the president commuted his sentence because of
a Bitcoin
what he considered
person who pled guilty.
Yeah, correct, and got sentenced, and president thought it was an overreach. If that was an overreach, and I forget the exact sentence, but I think it pales in comparison to Sean's. And remember, one of the things that is irksome, if you will, about Sean's, and I call him Sean, the president calls him Puff Daddy. I call him Sean as long as I've known him. One of the things that is somewhat irksome is that the government took a big swing at him, and basically tried to get him into take his entire fortune and net worth and the rest of his life, and they lost. And I think that the 50-month sentence was punitive, if you will. I think, if anything, he should have gotten some consideration for the fact that he took the gamble, he risked it, he went to trial, and basically beat all the mandatory life sentences, and beat the mandatory divestiture of all of his assets.
You told TMZ in an interview that you think Sean is going to make the comeback, the likes of which people are not expecting. How is that possible? I mean, there has been an extraordinary amount of dirty laundry, let's just put it that way, displayed in this trial. Things that Sean Combs himself felt that he needed to apologize for when he was given a chance to address the judge.
I've been around one or two or three people who have been counted out, who I've defended over the last, 40 some odd years. I will tell you, if you just think back 6 months, Elizabeth, I think anybody who would tell you 6 months ago, I remember my daughter Tenny going on and saying publicly that the media got it wrong before the trial ever took place. All of the kinds of wild rumors, all of the kind of conspiracy theories, and there was, I don't think there was anyone who thought he would be where he sits today, which is not guilty on the RICO, not guilty on sex trafficking, not guilty on another sex trafficking.
Right.
I've seen Sean overcome, I think, obstacles, maybe not as large as this, but obstacles where people counted him out. Remember, this is somebody who grew up, whose father was murdered and didn't have two nickels to rub together, and made himself into an iconic African-American billionaire. And I just think that he's got all of, if anybody's going to ever make a comeback, he's the guy to do it.
2 seconds left. How are his spirits? Good, bad?
He has tough days, like everybody else.
Okay.
He'll get through it.
Sean Diddy Combs was sentenced to 4 years and 2 months for conviction on transportation to engage in prostitution. Now, this was a lot more than the 14 months defense attorneys asked for, but a lot less than the 11 years that prosecutors wanted. Now, he was convicted back in July for the prostitution-related charges. He was acquitted on sex trafficking and racketeering. Now, I'd like to bring in attorney Trey Lovell, who will break down everything that happened and answer the larger question on what's next for Combs. What is your reaction to the sentencing? Do you think that this was a fair sentence?
I think it was a very fair sentence, and I think it's a good sentence for Diddy. I mean, if we go back to where this started, with the racketeering and the sex trafficking, I mean, had he been convicted on those, he's looking at life potentially. So as well as an asset forfeiture of his businesses and his monies and things like that. So had this gone south, he could have really been devastating, completely taken the liberation of his life, of his freedom and his businesses. So where are we now? We're looking at 50 months, which is less than what the prosecution wanted, which is less than what the sentencing guidelines were. So the judge even came in below that. And so if in light of everything that he was facing from the very beginning, even to now, it's really a good deal for him.
So do you think this is more of a win for the defense then?
I think it's more of a win for the defense. There was no chance he was going to get 14 months. That would have been off the table. What happened here really was, even though sentences for these types of crimes could have been a little bit less, the violence that the judge commented on earlier really, I think, made an impression on the judge. And that's what exacerbated the sentence above and beyond what typically he may have gotten had there been no violence. So we knew that he was going to add that as well, but it could have gone a lot more. Judge, could have been very safe in going within the guidelines of 6 to 7 years. But he chose not to. He came under those. Overall, yeah, I think it's a win for Diddy.
Now, there were some pretty emotional victim impact statements that were submitted to the court ahead of this. Now, Cassie Ventura, who is Combs's ex-partner, who was the star witness really for prosecution, she submitted a statement. I'm just going to take a moment and read a couple of lines from Cassie Ventura. Now, she says, quote, "I still have nightmares and flashbacks on a regular, everyday basis and continue to require psychological care to cope with my past. My worries that Sean Combs or his associates will come after me and my family is my reality. As much progress as I have made in recovering from his abuse, I remain very much afraid of what he is capable of and the malice he undoubtedly harbors towards me for having the bravery to tell the truth. He has no interest in changing or becoming better. He will always be the same cruel, power-hungry, manipulative man that he is." Very emotional, very powerful statement. And I want to take a moment to read Mia, who was another victim who was in the indictment, who actually testified. She was supposed to testify in person today and ended up changing her mind at the last minute. She did submit a statement, of course. And hers said, "What he stole from me cannot be returned. It cannot be reduced to years or money. He stole my freedom, my sense of safety, my ability to trust others, and my confidence. He stole 16 years of my life. Time I should have spent developing into the independent woman I was meant to be. My life has been profoundly broken." Trey, how important were these victim impact statements to the sentencing today?
I think these impact statements were extremely important. These are real victims, true pain, true suffering. And I don't think that fell lightly on the judge. But it was a tough deal for the judge because there was a lot of balancing. There were also a lot of statements in favor of Diddy Combs, his family, the Reverend, other people that were saying he's a changed man. He's not that person that we saw in that video beating up Cassie. He's different now. So even though these victim impact statements were extremely effective and very important, the other statements were as well. So the judge had a lot to balance here. And it really fell upon the judge to look, has Diddy Combs been rehabilitated? How remorseful is he? Is he being holding himself accountable? All those are very important factors. And I think to some extent, the judge did agree with that, did accept that, or he would have gotten in a much higher sentence. So yes, these victim impact statements are very important, but there were a lot of statements there that the judges had to do a lot of weighing.
I mean, they're definitely, prosecutors put on what they, their presentation, and then there seemed to be a parade of people for defense attorneys. I mean, it was all of the attorneys, all of his children. Like you said, it was a spiritual leader. There were so many people that spoke. One person in particular didn't speak today, but submitted a statement in support of Combs, and that was one of the victims in the indictment, Virginia Hune, who's also known as Gina. was named as one of the victims in the indictment. She submitted a statement actually going to the other side, saying that she was pressured by prosecutors. I'm just going to read a couple lines from her. She said, during the investigation, I felt pressured to feel like a victim. I told them I was not, but they insisted that I was, even when I expressed my truth otherwise. I was not trafficked. I did not engage in prostitution with him or others. That would have been my testimony if called to the stand. Does this one throw you for a loop?
It did a little bit, because it kind of puts you inside the prosecutor's office and how things really happen there. And there may have been a little bit of trying to force her to testify, get her on their side. But I think that just didn't mean a whole lot to the judge, because even though she may not have been a victim, there were other victims. And so he's going to look at Cassie, he's going to look at Jane, and look at their circumstances. But I think it was a little bit telling with this third victim in terms of what really happened. But I don't think it really mattered that much to the judge.
And obviously Combs himself spoke, which was the first time we've heard from him for a very long time, and even said it was so hard for him to be quiet throughout this entire process. He expresses remorse. He said, "I'm sorry." He said, "I was a changed man." Do you think that weighed pretty heavily in the judge's decision?
I do. I think from what the reports are is he did what he needed to do to put on his best face to convince the judge that he's accountable, he's remorseful, and is rehabilitated. That's really what he wanted to show. His statement's only going to go so far. He's the defendant. He's biased. We have this history of evidence, throughout the trial that is not, disappearing and going anywhere else. And so his impact statement, his statement to the judge is going to be effective, but it's going to be limiting in terms of its effect. But I think he did everything he could do to help himself.
Now, obviously, biggest question right now that everyone's asking, what is next? Can you kind of walk us through the process ostensibly of appeal? What's going to be happening now?
Yeah, so he's been sentenced, so he's going to start serving his time. We're not really sure where. The fact that it's a shorter amount of time, it's 50 months, and if you add credit, for time served, that may get him within the range where he may go to a lower security facility. One of these like medium security, not a prison where there's rapists and murders and things like that. So he may get sent to one of those. It's up to the Bureau of Prisons. But he's going to start serving his time. They're going to appeal. And then it's just going to be how quickly the appeal comes around. But one thing we got to notice is, in terms of federal convictions and federal sentencing, they typically serve about 85% of their sentence. And this is because there's credit for good time served, and assuming he's a good inmate and he's not making any problems, it's going to go down to about 85%. And then there are a few other programs he may be eligible for that if he participates in, it could reduce his sentence even more. So even though he's got 50 months, he may actually end up serving maybe 2.5 years or so.
And he already has 13 months credit for what he's given. So we're looking at 3 years, little, like you said, maybe it'll be coming down to about 2 years then.
Yeah. So, if we've got the 50 years or the 50 months, think about 85% of that, it's around 42 months or so, another maybe 13 for time served. So we're looking at around 29, 28 months. So, 2.5 years technically is the amount of time he'd actually serve. Now,
this appeals process, though, that's not going to be quick. I mean, how long does the appeals process from a legal perspective take, going to the appellate court?
Yeah, I mean, it can take a couple of years. I mean, it's not a fast process. And the issues for appeal are going to be a number of things during the trial. But I think in terms of the length of the sentence, that's going to be hard, because the fact that the judge came in lower than what the guidelines were, the recommendations were, it's going to be hard to overturn that on appeal. With respect to the elements of the prostitution charge, they're going to try to show that did not fall within the actual elements required there. There was no commercial act. There was no he didn't participate or get the prostitutes himself. Things like that. They're going to argue. It's a tough appeal, but I think that there could be a chance that by the time the appeal is heard and decided, he may be close to the end of his sentence.
Okay, this is not a legal question, not related. Just want to get your opinion. Do you think after this is all done, he's going to try to make a comeback, reinvent himself? Or is
Absolutely.
it over for him?
No, I mean, his reputation, his name has significantly been affected. He's never gonna have the same status as he did before. But I have no doubt he's gonna try to rebuild himself. And there's a number of ways you can do it. You can set up charity organizations, other organizations that help domestic survivors, people that are victims of domestic abuse. There's a lot of things he can do, and with a good PR team, so to speak, he can get his name out there. He can start rejuvenating his name, and getting more and trying to rebuild it. I have no doubt he's going to do that. There are ways which you can start to rebuild your name, and listen, people have short memories. After a few years, when he served his time, and this is long behind us, and he started to start these organizations, and he still has the chops as a businessman, and can still be effective. He may be able to rebuild and rebrand himself.
All right. Thank you so much, Trey, for joining us. Really appreciate your analysis.
Thanks for having me.
Obviously, he's disappointed, although he really shouldn't be. I think, a 4-year sentence here with already credit for the year or so that he has in, I think he did very well with respect to all of the drama and all of the circumstance around this trial. There was a lot of bad stuff out there, and I'm not saying I'm not passing judgment on that, but it just looked really bad. And he could have gotten up to 10 years or 11 years. So I think the judge, took everything into consideration. I think his family today made a very good plea for him, and I think he did very well. That's my opinion.
So, what in your experience, like your own experience and other, inmates that you've seen go through it and then show back up at the cell block, how do they take this? Do they bury their head in the pillow and cry, or do they keep their head held high and just pack up their stuff and wait for their assigned new prison? Like, tell me everything.
Well, everybody's different. I'm sure he went back was somewhat disappointed. So he's probably, dwelling on that. Hey, it could have been differently. Maybe I should have gotten out. Maybe he's a little bit upset, a little bit angry. I get it. All those emotions come into play. But right now, he's got to get ready. He'll spend a couple of weeks there until they designate him to a new facility. And he'll be a lot better off in prison than he is in the federal jail. At least there you can move around and you got some freedom on the yard and things like that. My thought is he'll collect himself, get himself together. There are ways for him to improve himself. They have the Bureau of Prisons now has a drug program. And if you're allowed to get into that drug program, you can knock as much as 18 months off your sentence. Now, I don't know if he'll qualify, if they'll allow him to go in, but he'll probably start to think about, okay, what can I do to reduce my time now? That's what everybody thinks when you get in there. Is there any way we can better ourselves? He's thinking about what facility they're going to send him to. I'm sure he spoke to his lawyers and he asked his lawyers to put in a facility that's close to his home, close to his family, a low or medium level. I don't think he'll get into a camp.
Can you though? Does your request actually count? I mean, I thought the feds just put you where it works for them. I didn't think you get a say in it.
Well, here's the thing. You could ask the judge to recommend. The Bureau of Prisons doesn't have to go along with the judge's recommendation, but it does help a little bit. They do try to sometimes satisfy the judge's request. You can put in a request, and sometimes they'll honor it, sometimes they won't. It's really up to them. They're not bound by anything at that point in time. So, but he's wondering now, hoping which facility he gets into. I don't think he'll get into a camp only because he's high profile. Even though his sentence qualifies him for a camp, it's a low security, sentence. But my feeling is he'll get into at least a medium because he's so high profile.
Is the camp the lowest security and therefore more paddle and tennis and all the other things and what they call Club Fed or Camp Cupcake?
Yeah, they moved me to a camp by accident at one point, and there's no fences or anything like that. And I wasn't there for too long because they realized they made a mistake and put me back in the medium security. But they tell you when you get there, listen, there's no fences. If you want to leave, you can leave. But when we catch you, we're going to add another 5 years onto your sentence. And while I was in that camp for 2 months, each month somebody ran away. I mean, they always try to do that. But yeah, he's thinking of that. Yeah, he's thinking of that. But you know, a medium security is not that
So
bad.
let me quickly go back, though. Go back to that piece about he's high profile, so he won't get a camp. Why wouldn't he? I thought in a camp, nobody's going to shank him because, again, they want out.
You know, the overriding factor there, I believe, is he's a guy with a lot of money. And I'll tell you, this happened to me when I went in there because of the profile I had, because of the way they wrote me up. You know, I had everybody and their brother inmate trying to do a deal with me when I got out, you know, a business deal. They need money. You know, because of the fact that he's a money guy, I think he's going to have more friends than he will enemies. And in a medium security, normally nobody's looking to shank you. When you get into the higher institutions, when people are doing, you know, a ton of time and there's no way you can benefit them, then you got a little more problem. But in a medium security, I don't think he'll have an issue at all. I really don't. He can be too much of a benefit to inmates that are always looking for something, and he could be a golden ticket for some people, at least in their mind.
I could just talk to you for hours and hours, but I have some other guests lined up, so I got to say bye there. But Michael Francis, thank you so much for being on again. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me. Take care.
You too. By the way, folks, Michael's book is called From Godfather to God the Father. Pick it up, have a read. Lots and lots of other people have.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.